In my March episode, I'm excited to welcome homebuilder extraordinaire David Longman to the podcast. David Longman has a long history on the Sunshine Coast. His family moved here when he was a small child, and he later graduated from Elphinstone before getting into the construction industry. He started contracting his own projects in 1989, and since then, he's built everything from custom homes to multi-unit complexes in commercial properties. Away from construction, he's an active volunteer and philanthropic in our community. He's also the co-owner of the 101 Brewhouse and Distillery and the Longman in Longman Developments. David, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Tony.
Really appreciate you coming by, mate. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
This is fun.
Right on. All right, so jumping straight in, I know you moved to the Sunshine Coast as a small child. Could you share with us what brought you and your family to the Sunshine Coast and what it was like growing up here?
Yeah, so my parents moved here in the mid-70s. My dad had been a fireman in the Vancouver Fire Department, and he had a sports injury and lost his eye playing sports, and he wanted a left-hand turn. They wouldn't no longer allow him to be an active fireman, and just wanted to get out of Dodge and try something new. So they moved to the coast. Bought the Roberts Creek General Store shortly after moving here, which wasn't the store that people would be familiar with today, but a store that stood on sort of wooden stilts and not much foundation. Yeah. It was built back in the 40s, I believe. Yeah.
What sport was he playing when he...
Lacrosse.
Lacrosse, right.
Yeah,
like took a stick in the eye kind of?
Yeah, that type of thing, Tony.
That's brutal,
yeah.
Can you tell me about how you got into construction and how that evolved into Longman Developments?
Okay, so as a young kid, my parents thought high school jobs and working was everything, right? And they went, they was really focused. It was clear that maybe university wasn't going to be my path, Tony. Variety of those jobs in high school, but sort of not very fulfilling jobs. And shortly after graduating high school, literally within a month or two, Bruce Bachowski, a longtime builder on the Sunshine Coast and a family friend actually gave me an opportunity to have a job. And literally, I can remember the first day on the job site, we stood up two exterior walls off the foundation, and I looked over my shoulder, pulling out of the driveway, and I went, wow, that looks different. And it tickled me, Tony. I was really fell in love with it almost immediately.
Well, just seeing how, creating something so quickly.
Yeah, it just satisfied me something to see that, when you put your energy into your work, you make a difference. And, that's just growing that experience for me, right? You can take that from a single family home, even as a tradesman working on it, to fulfilling those aspirations through buying land and building your own homes and growing your business from there,
Well, that's great to know how it all started out. But since you've started, you've been doing it a little while now. How has construction changed since you got into the industry?
It's changed radically. The desires of governments and municipalities to improve the building process they're endless, right? And they've been growing. And what's interesting about those things is as these processes change, so do the complication of building homes. So back in the early 90s when my business was really in its fledgling stage and starting to grow, we could get a building permit for a house in about 2 weeks. You'd find a piece of property, open up a plan book from Jenish Plans and flip through the pages, find a home that fits on the property. And the next thing you know, 2 weeks later, you're building the house, Tony, at a cost of maybe $3,000 for plans and building permit and everything. Nowadays, that process can be a minimum of 3 months, maybe 8 months if you need a development permit application for the property because of specific environmental or other standards that might be required of the municipality.
And that's a single family home?
That's just a single family home.
And what's it gone from a couple of grand or $3,000 for building plans? What's it gone up to
so now your minimum cost to get through your building permit, and some of this to the municipality, 10 to 12,000 of a simple home could be to the municipality, but you're going to have engineers that you have to hire, people for your septic field, for health. You're going to have just a whole kit and caboodle of other expenses that have to happen even before you can apply for the building permit. So that process usually takes 2 to 3 months, and then maybe a month of the building department processing the building permit. So it's 4 months in all likelihood now, which is challenging. Yeah,
it complicates the process. And that's a single family home. What are the biggest challenges for launching a bigger project the one you've got going at Blue Heron?
Yeah, well, there's so many challenges, and those challenges are constantly changing. And it's your job as the builder developer to figure out how you can get these projects to come to fruition. It's easy to have great ideas that help to maybe address the housing, but can you economically pull it off? Will the community support it? Will council support these ideas? So you've got to put something, what I've always tried to do is start off with the idea that if you want to bring stuff forward to the community, try to make it sensible, right? Try to not start off from this idea that you have to knock it out of the park and push the community faster than it's ready to be pushed. If you do those things right, the political process could be pretty fair, although often very long.
What we see a lot here is like retirees, looking to downsize here, and most of them want like single level living. So why would we not see more kind of ranches with ocean views kind of thing, which seems to be what everybody wants?
Of course it is. So, whenever you ask these questions, they make me think about different decades and different times where this question, that I might answer the question differently. Right now, I'd say the single biggest impediment is the sheer lack of raw land.
Yeah.
So when I was building in the 90s and early 2000s, subdivisions had an abundance of properties on the coast, but there was also just infill lots all over the place. Trying to find an infill lot that maybe meets that criteria of being a level entrance home with a view, it's challenging. As a matter of fact, I'm just, you'd know better than I, but if I'm thinking through Gibsons right now, I can't think of too many listings that would allow me to go out and build that specific product right now.
Yeah, and you pay a premium for them if they are there, because I think everyone knows that they're in demand.
Absolutely.
Supply and demand. Have you found that we've lost, since you've been here, have you noticed that land's been taken and kind of put in the ALR or made agricultural reserve, or have we just kind of bought up and built out all of the available land? Like no land was taken away that could have been used, right?
Yeah. So what I think happens is that as cost, so the ALR is a component of it, but there's large blocks of property that are around that are capable of being developed. But as burdens get put on what the requirements are to bring that property to market, what often happens is the value of the land is actually being diminished by the cost of government, because the developer has to be able to get the costs back. Yeah. So they're looking at this property and the seller's thinking this property is worth X because they think, I can get 50 lots out of this, but they're not necessarily accounting for all the costs that the developer is going to have to burden. So they're just not seeing eye to eye, sellers and buyers in that application. So it's really hard to bring property to development and make that equation work these days.
Yeah, I get a lot of people saying, why are, a new condos or whatever, why are they so much money? And it's like, well, you don't realize how much money it costs to build them. So the actual margin the developer's making in the end is pretty slim. Yeah. And recently, with changes to, the local, political climate, that kind of thing, it's been harder, or with inflation, that kind of stuff, it's been harder for people to actually bring that product to market and make money. I mean, there's a lot of developments now in Vancouver that are, being sold or gone into bankruptcy because they couldn't sell them.
One of the interesting observations that's happened because of this phenomenon is when we started building our earliest multifamily projects back in 2008-9, you might find that the cost of the land on the front end of the construction process might represent 25% of the cost of total construction. Well, with the costs rising so rapidly on the government component of the construction costs, as well as inflation on just general building costs in general, land might only represent 10% of the cost to bring a project together. It's not a big component any longer.
But it's a cost of developing the land and all of that kind of stuff.
So
you hear horror stories sometimes that, people will hire a builder, maybe someone from off coast or, someone that's just starting out. And they're quoted one price, but when, it's actually time to move in, they've paid maybe, 25% more up to 100% more. So how does that happen, and how could someone protect themselves from that happening?
Well, I'll tell you a couple observations that I've heard over the course of 30 years. One interesting statistic is apparently when people are going to build a home, they spend more time, or contemplating having a home built, they'll spend more time investigating the car they're going to purchase than they do the home they're going to buy. So one of the things I always tell people is reach out when you're interviewing a builder. Say, we would like to speak to your last 3 people you built homes for. Do your due diligence in the community. Reach out to other sub-trades and say, who have you enjoyed working with? Just do your due diligence. So some of those things can happen for, in the worst case scenarios, these things are happening because people are dishonest. Sometimes they're happening because some newer builders are inexperienced and genuinely knowing where prices are going to likely fall, and they're trying to be optimistic and they're trying to be hopeful. Ultimately, that fails because they've got to look the customer in the eye when the process doesn't go that way. And it takes courage when people are coming to you and they're saying, hey, we'd really like to build this house for $1 million. Can you do it? And you know that they put a $1.5 million house in front of them. And if you tell them it's 1.5, you're not likely to get that home. You still got to tell them, because in the long term, your reputation is protected better by telling them the truth.
Yeah, I'd say that's similar to like when you're a realtor and you tell someone you can get them 1.5 million for a house. You know you can only get them $1 million, but you just gradually grind them down. And those builders are just, kind of grinding people up.
Yeah.
So would you say in your process, like if someone working with Longman Developments, you educate them? Would that be a big part of you educate them through every step of the process?
So what'll happen? It just happened in the last week. Is like we've had a customer come in. They're looking at property, and we gave them. They sent us 3 images of 3 homes. Nothing you can price off of. And we said, here's what we suspect these houses are. Now, keep in mind, whenever somebody sends you pictures out of a magazine, those houses are in magazines because they're there for some reason.
Nice.
Even if they're not the biggest homes, they're there because they're attractive, beautiful homes. So we educated them what we thought those houses would likely come in once we had full set of opportunity to bid the property properly.
Yep.
And they were surprised with how high the numbers were. And we just said, hey, we'd like to go out and talk to other people. And all we told them to do is just reach back out, go out, talk to other people, try to get people to move to firm contract prices if you can, which we will often do. More often than not, we build on firm contract prices. And
so that's you kind of take the risk on those ones.
That's where we're taking the risk. That can't always happen because some properties have too many variables. When you're building on fixed contract prices, you have to have all those decisions made before you get going, and it can take a little bit of the joy for the person looking to build a truly custom home. So there's benefits in going both directions.
With what's happening kind of now in the States, how do you see the potential tariffs, US tariffs, impacting Sunshine Coast project? Would that happen in the short term or medium term? Or?
Yeah, that's everybody's big question, isn't it? My gut tells me that Trump is using this to bully and shame Canada into maybe making other concessions. I'd like to think the people around him are wise enough to tell him this isn't good for them.
No, he hasn't fired all of those guys yet. Yeah.
That's fair enough. That said, if it will hurt the American economy, but it's going to hurt Canada a lot worse, and this will only aggravate the starting of new construction even more.
Your projects have a reputation of being exceptionally well built. I personally use it all the time. Like people say, "Who do you use?" I'm like, "Well, this is a top guy." There's different builders on the coast. But how do you balance affordability with high quality materials and craftsmanship? Right.
Well, I appreciate that, Tony. That's kind. Let me just look at that a little bit differently. I'll tell you why we look after our reputation so critically. Development money is very flexible, right? Development money can move from community to community and find the best opportunities to make margin. And so you'll see developers come and go constantly in communities. Somewhere along the line, I decided that my ambition isn't so great that I want to work where I want to work in the community that I love. So, for a developer doing the degree of volume of work we're doing, it's pretty rare to do it entirely in one community.
Absolutely.
Such you just got to look after. It's no fun going to the grocery store if you feel like you're not proud of the work you and the projects you brought to the market.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't. Yeah, you can't be fly by night and stay in the community kind of thing.
That's right.
So. What's a process for someone that wants to build their dream home? So say, they decide we want to build our own place. Do they call you first? Do they buy the land first? What's typically the first step in, working with Longman Developments?
There is no first step in terms of the order of those things. What we love to see, because we can help people through that process, is when people meet their agent and they're looking for land, that they take maybe 5-10 minutes, come into any reputable builders, and we've got lots of good reputable builders, and I go sit down with them, get a good understanding of what your building costs are beforehand. And as you tie up the property, even subjects you can entertain is subject to reviewing the site with a potential builder to get a better understanding what the consequences of that purchase might mean.
That would be the first step then, is if you are thinking about buying your first home, then you'd building a home, then you'd go out with your agent, look at some land, and then talk to some builders to kind of figure out who's a good fit. So I assume, like being a realtor, working with a builder, it's kind of a personal thing. You want to make sure that you jive with that person.
Absolutely,
because it is a pretty long process, right?
It's
lots of interaction.
It's a long process, and it's a very it's a pretty powerful relationship you form with homeownership building. You say your permitting process is 4 to 5 months. If you add a design in on the front of that, it's longer. So you're going to be working with the builder, up to 2-year process.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the building process is a year for a nice home.
Yeah.
That's a 16-month relationship with you. You want to get along with them and you want to understand what each other's goals and aspirations for the project are.
Do you have architects that you work with, draftsmen? Do you have a bunch of plans that you own, or does each lot, depending on what it is, require a different plan? I guess it varies from lot to lot, does it?
Yeah. So, as I started off in this process, I was saying, like, it used to be so easy just to open a plan book and find a plan. That's getting harder and harder because for a multitude of reasons. One of the reasons is the individual lots that are around a community like this maybe have some idiosyncrasies that really make designing a custom home the better way of building on that specific piece of property. Mm-hmm. We work with a variety of different architects, two or three that we really intimately work with. And depending on the nature of what we're hearing from the customer and what they're hoping to achieve, we'll recommend the designer or architect that we feel is best,
so
the
it's
best
like
fit for them.
Like a case-by-case decision.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so you have 2 upcoming projects in Gibsons. Can you please give us an update on the Harbour in Lower Gibsons, and then I'll ask you about phase 2 of Blue Heron in Upper Gibsons.
Okay, so the Harbour is, we're 3 years into this design and political process. It's very complicated. We all know about the contentious nature that's happened down there and with
Especially
other
in
developments.
LA. Yeah.
And we're just working through it with the town of Gibsons. Really consistently and breaking this down to a lot of small pieces so the public can be aware and confident that as this process moves forward, we're meeting the goals and aspirations of the community to protect the aquifer, to make sure that the scale and size of the development is is appropriate for the community in a way that we believe the vast majority of the community can support.
I was down driving by the market the other day and I saw there's like a play area down there. What's the story behind that?
Well, that's a beautiful story about volunteer. A gentleman, his name's eluding me right now, had lost his wife sadly, and the wife had been a big volunteer at the Gibsons Public Market, and the family donated a big whack of money to the market to bring this vision, which was the wife's vision, to have a playground beside the market, and we were lucky enough to be a part of helping them bring that project to the community.
Yeah. It seemed like a really nice spot, and I saw a lot of kids playing there, so it looked like it's working out really well. And then Blue Heron, I know you've done, phase 1's done, that's where the 101 is, right next there.
Yeah, phase 1, phases are complicated. So the first building was the Bank of Montreal to go in, and then the Coastline Health Facility, then the 101, and now we're starting on our next building. That building's going to be our next one to market, which we should be breaking ground here in the next few months. We're getting ready to go in and apply for the building permits on that process.
Is there going to be a commercial aspect to that as well, or all residential?
It's largely residential. So the zoning required a certain amount of commercial space. The town was open-minded to that space not being abundant. It doesn't seem to be, the commercial demand doesn't seem to be as high on the coast as the residential demand. And so I think we have a total of 34 residential units, and we have ground floor. We have 4 residential units, which will likely be stratified and sold so that the commercial tenant can participate in ownership of their space.
Yeah, I think that a lot of commercial guys like that option, and hasn't really been that option. I do see a shortage of light industrially zoned stuff out there. There's kind of a huge demand for that.
It's tricky in a small municipal boundaries like Gibsons. That industrial land that is key to any community is really challenging.
You don't get the same return on your investment money.
Well, you tend to want little larger properties, and we have Venture Way, but those Venture Way properties are very specific to a very specific type of industrial need. Unlike, say, the hillside property that's actually SCRD, where we know where the gravel pits and BA Blacktop and Gibsons Ready Mix are located. Yeah,
I guess that can be challenging as well, working between different municipalities like Town of Gibsons here, and because you work all up and down the coast, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 4 different levels of government on the Sunshine Coast. It creates, a knowledge base that you have to know how to navigate all of them.
Yeah. So you've done a lot of projects so far. Have you got a favourite project or one that you're most proud of?
Yeah, that's a good question. Do you have a favourite child?
No, not at all, no. So equally love the same. Yeah.
So I'd say I don't have a favourite project. What I'll say is what has always tickled me. So we largely start off as building residential homes by buying land and building homes. And one of the things that's really, really rewarding, and I never get tired of this, is when you see either young families or people of any age for that matter who find the opportunity to sit down, work hard, save up a down payment, and they get it themselves into the first home. When you turn in the keys over to people that you've seen work so hard for it, that just tickles you.
And facilitating their ability to come and live on the Sunshine Coast. I mean, it's still, I think, a really, less of a well-kept secret now, but still it is a very unique lifestyle here, if you like. The outside and being, sense of community, that kind of stuff. So I guess you're facilitating that dream for people. So
I'm living it, Tony. I love this community. I wouldn't go anywhere else.
What's your vision for Longman Developments in the next 10 years?
I'll tell you what really keeps me excited about my work these days is I have an amazing team. They've helped me through tough times. They've been with, so we're like family. Mm-hmm. And literally, as I say that, my two young adult boys, Cameron and Quinn, who are, what are they, 24 and 26 now.
Excellent guys.
Yeah.
My buddy. Yeah.
Hardworking guys. They're getting engaged.
Very proud of those guys. You should be.
They're working really hard, and as long as everybody in it's enjoying it, I'm gonna keep pushing forward.
Where do you see yourself in 2035? You're still going to be doing this? You're going to be
what do you say? as long like I say, as long as the people around me are enjoying it, and I'm enjoying it, which is still happening, I'll keep going. I don't know if I have many of those 60-hour work weeks in me like I did for most of my 20s, 30s, and 40s, but I'm going to keep going.
Well, I think they say in retirement, if you enjoy what you do, you're not really working. And anyway, I've really appreciated you coming on. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
And we'll see you around the town.
All the best. Thanks so much.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. While you're here, maybe you want to check out one of my listings or watch my video about why you should choose me to sell your home.